Carrie and Jack are having a romantic evening at the Abbott house, and they just finished kissing, and he tells her how enticing she is. She goes down to the wine cellar to get a new bottle, and Kyle comes in upset and tells him that he was able to see Lola for about 3 minutes before Arturo kicked him out again. And Jack says to him, well, didn't you tell them? Did you more or less explain to them? And Kyle said that he tried to, but they still won't let him see her, no matter what he does. As they're talking, Carrie overhears them in the background and comes in and says that Jabot called with an emergency, that the new lipstick line has a problem and she needs to go fix it. Jack helps her put her coat on, and he says to her, there really isn't an emergency, is there? And she said, there is. Your son needs you more than I do right now. Lola tells Ray that she's pregnant and that he can't arrest her now because the baby will be born in prison. And he takes the handcuffs off her. And she says, this will change everything, that it'll bring more love into their family. Ray says he wishes she could believe him and asks, well, where's the pregnancy test? She says she threw it out. And he goes, oh, it's in the trash. And she says, oh, I threw the trash out last night. And he says, oh, well, you're very good at destroying evidence, aren't you? And she says she wishes she has the test so she could show him. And he said, well, we're just going to have to get another test, aren't we? Because to find out whether this baby is real or just another lie. Phyllis is at home packing a bag when Summer walks in and says she's been looking for her everywhere. She couldn't find her Crimson Lights, couldn't find her Jabot, or any of her normal haunts, and wonders if she had skipped town. And Phyllis says she had thought about it. Then Summer realizes she's packing a bag and wonders if she's going out of town. Phyllis is about to tell her what's going on when the phone rings, and it's the athletic club confirming her reservation for a room there. Phyllis tells Summer that that's where she's going, and Summer wonders why that is, and she tells her that Nick threw her out of the house and out of his life. Michael is visiting with Nick and Billy and talking about the case. And Billy tells Michael to let Nick know what he told him. And he said the best strategy of getting them off is to go for an acquittal, which means not having either Nikki or Victoria take the stand. Billy says that's a horrible idea because Victoria was the only one in the room when JT attacked her. And she needs to be able to tell her side of the story. Otherwise, she's never getting out of jail. Billy continues to try to convince Michael to put Victoria and Nikki on the stand to tell their side of the story, basically saying what they did was a defensible act, that JT was trying to hurt Victoria, she was fighting against him to save herself, and Nikki did the only thing she could do in that moment and saved Victoria from JT. He asks Nick what he thinks, and Nick agrees with Michael that it's not a good idea to put them on the stand. Michael says that Christine will just destroy them in cross-examination because they did lie. They lied for months to the police, to their lawyers, to their family, and it'll look like it was intentional because of that. They believe that Phyllis is really going to be the linchpin that could be the detriment toward their case. Billy says to Nick, well, can't you bring her online? And Nick says, well, when has anybody ever been able to bring Phyllis in line? And so Billy says to Michael, well, you're going to have to destroy Christine's cross-examination. Nick says there's another thing, that the police have issued search warrants for Dark Horse, looking at their servers. And Michael's wondering, what are they looking for there? Mariah's upset and worried about Christine calling her in for questioning, and she hopes that she helped because she said that Sharon didn't want anything to do with any of this, and it wasn't her idea at all. Tessa tries to comfort her and saying you did the best you could, that there's not much else you could do in that respect. And they have to see that really Sharon, at least in this, is innocent. And Tessa says, if there's anything I could do, let me know. Mariah says, you might be sorry you asked that, because what I'm about to ask you might be the hardest thing you've ever done for a while. Mia attempts to get Ray to let her go, that does he really want their baby to be born in prison? You know what they do to women in prison when they're giving birth? They strap them down, they do horrible things to them, and does he really want his baby to suffer like that? And Ray says, what do you want me to do, Mia? You committed a crime. And she said, it was just, I never meant for this to happen. I just wanted to confront Abby. I didn't want to hurt her. And he said, why? Because it was Lola instead of Abby, that makes it okay? You still shoved her, and she still fell into the pool, and if Kyle hadn't shown up when he did... And she said, well, was never my intent. It was just supposed to be an argument, and she left. It happened so fast. Ray says, oh, well, it didn't happen so fast that you stepped on her phone. And she goes, it was just a stupid, childish prank. It didn't really mean anything. While they're arguing, Ray gets a phone call from Arturo and tells him that he has to get down to the hospital right away. Ray grabs his coat and hands Mia her coat and says, you're coming with me because I'm not letting you out of my sight. Phyllis is filling Summer in on what happened the night of JT's death. Summer is incredulous that they rolled him up in a rug and buried him in the park, and asks why didn't they just go to police. And Phyllis says, how hard it is to prove domestic violence in the courts. And Summer agrees that it would definitely be a challenge. And Phyllis said that they made a pact to stay quiet, but when evidence surfaced that Victor is the one who killed JT, the stress was too much for her and she confessed. She tried to make it seem like it was just her, but that story fell apart. And Phyllis decided that when they were arrested that she needed to go and tell what really happened in her side of the story. And that is why Nick kicked them out, or kicked her out. So Phyllis asks, or Summer wonders that Phyllis believes that her testimony will help the other ladies be free, and that nobody would ever convict Nikki of trying to protect her daughter. And Summer said, but if they do, it'll be because of you. Phyllis asked her, did I do the right thing? Michael is on the phone with Christine's office and trying to find out the discovery through what evidence and why they're looking through Dark Horse's servers. Billy and Nick want to know. Once he knows what they found out, he tells him he will, but right now he has to get back to the office. Billy tells Nick he also has to get to the office and look after the kids, and he can let himself out. Nick gets a phone call, and it's Mariah calling him and saying that she needs to talk to him about Sharon, but it's probably better that they do it in person and not on the phone. Nick says, come to the Dark Horse offices and we can talk there. They hang up, and Mariah says to Tessa, thank you for doing this, and are you scared? And Tessa says, no, just terrified. Ray shows up at the hospital and asks what's going on, what's wrong with Lola. Nate is there, as is Arturo, and tells him that her team has been watching around the clock and monitoring her liver levels and the numbers, and that they are going down, and they were hoping that she would improve, but her liver is failing. she's going to need a transplant. And they said the good thing is they can use a living donor. So, because she has a big family here, they will test the family out. Roy asked, will that cure her? And he said, well, the good thing is that the donated liver will grow and replace what's been damaged in the first place. So Ray and Arturo are in to get tested, and Arturo asked Mia if she will also get tested, and she said she has some health issues, so that will prevent her from doing so. Arturo and Nate head down to the lab, and Mia asks Ray, how long will this take? And he says, I don't know, but you stay here, and when I get back, we're going to get a pregnancy test and see if you still actually have health issues. Mia's sitting in the waiting room reading through a pregnancy book magazine when another pregnant woman comes in and sits down. Mia says, hi, and the woman nods, hello, and picks up another pregnancy magazine. Mia says, oh, you should read this one, because it has everything from baby names to how to deal with any pregnancy issues. She comes over and sits beside her and hands her the magazine, and the lady starts to read it. Mia says there's so much to think about, so much to plan. Billy arrives at the Abbott mansion while Kyle and Jack are talking about Lola. And he fills them in about the case and what Michael is thinking of doing. Or that he's just come to pick up some clothes, and the kids are missing their mom, that they only see their dad for 24 hours a day. And he's saying that there's somebody who's really making this a problem for them, Phyllis. Summer says to Phyllis that, remember when you forgave me for what happened with Billy and said that a mother's love is unshakable, that no matter what she did, she'll always love her? And Phyllis said, did I say that? And Phyllis says, yeah, you did. Well, I feel the same way about you, and whatever you do, I'm always going to be there, and that you can't get rid of me. And they hug, and Summer says, you're a savage. And Phyllis says, excuse me? And Summer says that's a good thing. That's the kind of person you want on your side. Someone who'll go to bat for you and who stands up and is strong and fierce. They hug it out, and Phyllis says she's got to get back to packing because Nick will be home soon. Summer says, just don't stay away too long. Give Dad a few days to calm down, and he'll probably let you come back in. Phyllis says, I'm way ahead of you. I only booked the hotel for a week. Mia keeps talking to the pregnant lady in the waiting room and talking about how wonderful women look when they have the pregnancy glow, and wouldn't it be something if a makeup company could bottle that and call it Prego Glow by Jabot? The lady laughs and agrees. She gets up to go to the bathroom, and her purse falls off her lap. And Mia notices that there's a lot of bills in her purse. And she goes, oh, having a baby is really expensive. And the lady agrees and says, you wouldn't believe. Mia looks at her and says, how would you like to make some extra money for the baby? Nick, Mariah, and Tessa show up at Dark Horse. And Nick wants to know what she wants to talk about. And Mariah says that Christine had called her in to talk about the night of the party, and about the video of the women dragging JT's body in the rug out to the car. Tessa says that there was a camera in the garage that JT had placed there, and it recorded the whole thing. And somehow, because JT was downloaded to Dark Horse servers, and Tessa then used that to blackmail Nikki. Nick doesn't say anything, but doesn't look surprised. And Mariah says, why don't you look surprised? Billy, Kyle, and Jack are talking about Phyllis, and that she's basically protecting herself in all this, even though she says she's not, and that he's not the only one who thinks so, that the 3 women sitting in jail also believe that, as does Nick. And Jack's surprised that Nick would think that of Phyllis. And he says, that she came into Jabot and pretended there was nothing wrong and that she had the world on her string, that her hands were clean. And that Kyle says that, well, she kind of has to because she'd lose face with the board and that would hurt them in the industry. Jack goes, well, what can we do about it? Billy says, we take our company back. That Kyle and him had talked about it before, but they can't do it without Jack. Ray comes into the waiting room and Mia's not there. Mia shows up and he said, where were you? And she said, well, you were gone so long I got worried. And she asked how it went at the lab, and he said the test went fine, that they just have to wait for the results. And hopefully Lola will be okay. And so she said, the worry's not good for me, not good for me or the baby. And so he said, well, you should be more worried about Lola right now. And she goes, I am. And he said, because if this doesn't work and she dies, you're going to be going to prison for murder. So he said, let's go. And she said, where? And he goes, to get a pregnancy test. Mariah says to Nick that you knew about the video. And Nick admits, and the blackmail. And she realizes that Phyllis told him. Tessa says that she was wrong for what she did using the video to get money from his mother and the other women. And that she's apologized for it. Nick gets upset over that and says to Mariah that you knew about all this, but you did nothing. And she said, I learned about it after the fact. And he said, yet you stayed with her. And she goes, well, yes, it took time to get through it, but we did get through it. And more or less insinuating you choose who you love, you basically stick with them. And they asked, is he going to go to the police with it? And he said, well, that would do no good because it would be basically an admission of guilt by handing money over to a blackmailer. Mariah asked, what are you going to do? And he said, well, you 2 are going to leave. I have work to do. Phyllis is sitting at the athletic club at a table, and Carrie comes over to her and asks how she's doing. And she said, thanks for meeting me, and asks how's Jack, and that she's sorry she didn't know she had plans with him. Carrie said that she did, but Kyle showed up, and so she begged off that Kyle needed him more. And Phyllis asks how things are going, and that Jack's a good guy. And Carrie agrees that things are going really well. They're progressing great. And that she usually keeps men at a distance. But Jack really sees her for who she really is. Carrie can tell there's more to it. And she asks her, okay, now that we've got my love life out of the way, what's the real reason you asked me here? Phyllis said, I need a friend, a comrade in arms. We're going to war. Jack tells Billy and Kyle that Phyllis won her spot as the Jabot CEO fair and square, and there's really nothing they can do about it. Billy says, if she's at the helm when this trial's going on, it could be a disaster for Jabot. And Jack says, well, what can we do? I'm not going to do anything underhanded. He learned his lesson from Ashley, from what happened there. And Billy said, it will be above board. I can't guarantee we won't get our hands dirty, though. And Jack goes, well, what can we do? And Billy says we're going to need some inside information, which will have to come from Carrie. Phyllis is filling Carrie in on what happened the night of JT's death, and telling her that she did what she had to do by going to Christine, and she's trying to protect herself and her friends, as well as protect Jabot, but because she's the face of Jabot, she's probably going to be attacked. Carrie asks, well, what do you want me to do? Jack tells Kyle and Billy that I'm not going to put a woman I have significant feelings for in the middle of this. And they said they really have no choice because they can't get any information from Phyllis because she now has a closed door policy. She's shutting everybody else out. There's really nothing they can do. They need to get the information from Carrie. Ray and Mia arrive back at home, and he hands her a bag with the pregnancy kit test in it. And she said, really, this is what we've come to? And he said, I want to believe you, but as much as I want my sister to recover, but you're the one who put her in the hospital. And she said, please, I never meant to hurt her. I need you to believe me. And he hands her the bag. She gets up and heads to the bathroom. Nick tells Michael at Dark Horse about the video on the Dark Horse servers and the blackmail that Tessa did to the women. And Michael said, well, now we know what they were looking for on the Dark Horse servers. And it says, we're going to be able to use this. This is good. Nick says, well, how's that possible? It's going to make them look guilty because Nikki paid it out. Michael said, no, it'll look like they were already afraid and had something to hide, which they did, and that someone was using that to their own advantage. He said, for once, they're ahead of the game. Phyllis tells Carrie that because of all this, that the Abbotts are going to want to remove her from the CEO position and put an Abbott in their place. And Carrie agrees that that would be a mistake at this point in the company's redevelopment. And she tells Phyllis that she's with her and she will help her no matter who they have to fight. Jack tells Kyle and Billy that this can't be about destroying Phyllis's reputation. It's just about getting the company back. They agree to that, and Billy says, so are you in? And Jack says, yes, it's time to put the company back where it belongs, in the hands of the family. Arturo was sitting in the waiting room at the hospital, and Nate comes in, and Arturo asks, how are the results? Nate tells him he wishes he had better news for him, but neither Ray or Arturo are a match for Lola. And Arturo asks, well, what do they do now? And Nate tells him that call everyone you know and have them come down here and get tested immediately because they're in a race against time. Mia comes out of the bathroom with the pregnancy test and says, this isn't the way she wanted him to find out, that she wanted, if she'd had time, she would have done it a cute way. And he asks for the pregnancy test, which she gives him. He looks at it and it shows positive that she's pregnant. He sits down on the couch stunned and says, I'm going to be a father. And she said, yes, it's a dream come true. A little boy with your eyes, or a little girl with my smile. And that's a gift from God to their hands. But that's it for February 25th for Young and the Restless. Check back tomorrow when you'll get a new detailed update day ahead. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.